Hi, my name is Karen Sierra, and today I'm going to be talking about mumps. So I just wanted to go over a brief history of mumps really quickly. So in the 5th century BC, they were able to discover the first ever written description of mumps, and that was by the name of Hippocrates. Hippocrates was also known as the father of medicine, and so they were able to find his description of a certain outbreak that happened on a Greek island, and he was able to describe these people that contracted this disease as a certain characteristic of swelling around the ears on both sides, and they were able to connect that to mumps, since mumps' main characteristics is also swelling around the ears as well. And so it wasn't until 1934 that the cause of mumps was discovered, and that was by Johnson and Goodpasture. And they found that the mumps was caused by a virus that they found in the saliva. And so in 1945, they were able to isolate the mumps virus, which was very crucial because now that they're able to isolate this virus, they're able to move forward in developing a vaccine for it. So they did just that, and in 1967, the FDA was able to approve the mumps vaccine. But in 1971, they were able to license the MMR vaccine, which means that you're not only getting vaccine against mumps, but also measles and rubella as well, which is a good thing. And so in 1998, however, this controversy started with Wakefield about the MMR vaccine causing autism. It caused a lot of controversy, as Dr. Cody had mentioned earlier, and as a result, many people had listened to what he had to say, and people weren't getting vaccinated. So as a result, there was a significant increase of mumps cases, of a lot of complications with people, and even death was happening because people's bodies were developing a right response to mumps, the virus. So this was very negative thing, and so it wasn't until 2009 the U.S. court overruled Wakefield's claims, and in 2010 he was found guilty and his work was labeled as dishonest. So if you try looking online, his published work, Dr. Cody showed us that when you go, you'll see in big red letters across the paper that it's going to be labeled dishonest. And so, however, good news, in 2013, in the UK, they had the highest MMR vaccination rates, which is a good thing, which means that more people are having access to this vaccine, and more people are getting vaccinated, more parents are getting their children vaccinated. So overall, there is a promotion of health and well-being happening in children, young adults, and future generations to come. And however, in 2016 and 2018, there's been an outbreak of mumps throughout the U.S. between young adults that I will discuss later on in the presentation. So to characterize mumps is otherwise known as epidemic parotitis. It's known as an acute viral illness. It's caused by a mumps virus, as I stated earlier, and its family is Paramyxoviridae, and the genus is Arupilovirus. And the virus consists of a negative single-strand RNA genetic material. It's enveloped, it has a helical capsid, and its size consists of a diameter of 90 to 300 nanometers. So as you can see on the right, this is what the virus looks like under the electron microscope. And this is a three-dimensional image of the virus again. And so as you see here, these spikes that are on the surface of the viral envelope are known as glycoproteins. So these two different colors indicate the two different types of glycoproteins on the mumps. Please ignore the train. So the mumps includes HN protein and F protein. So these glycoproteins are involved in viral attachments to host cells. They're able to spread newly formed virions to those host cells, and these glycoproteins also neutralize antibodies of the host that they're invading. So these are some signs and symptoms of mumps. These are just the common ones. So these include fever, headaches, loss of appetite, tiredness, muscle aches, and most importantly, the telltale sign of mumps is the swelling of the salivary glands. So that's just going to be like over here in this area, as Hippocrates has stated, like below the ear along the jawline could be where the swelling starts to develop. So I want to discuss more on that and how it looks like. So as you see, it's just incredibly swollen. There's just, you aren't able to identify his jawline at this point. It just looks very uncomfortable. And these three glands, as the parotid gland, the sublingual gland, and submandibular gland, are all included in what is being affected when there's swelling. So how does this mumps spread? So it's important to note that mumps is very, very contagious. It's transmitted in different ways. One of them includes airborne. So as I stated earlier, mumps viruses are identified through the saliva, through droplets. So when you cough, sneeze, or talk to a different person, whichever way droplets are exiting through your body, which is through the nose or mouth, it's going to travel at a great distance and land on either a person or an object. Another different mode of transmission is contact. So whether you're having a person-to-person interaction between reservoir and host, that's where you can also get the virus. And as Homer said, known as the kissing disease, that is another mode of contact, how you can get the virus, as well as sexual contact. So another different way of transmission is vehicle and sharing items that could have saliva on it. So items, I mean inanimate items like water, food, cups that you had put your mouth on that could have saliva on it that you're sharing with somebody else. That is a possible way of how the virus can spread. It's important to note that the mumps can also be passed on by people who have the disease, even though they're asymptomatic, so it's important to remember that. So, is there treatment for mumps? So, unfortunately, there is no cure for mumps, but the CDC does recommend, if you do get mumps and you're showing signs and symptoms, to get bed rest, fluids, and get any fever reductions depending on your symptoms, which can be prescribed by a doctor, recommended or prescribed by a doctor. So even though there's no cure, there is a way to prevent this disease, and that's through the MMR vaccine, as I stated. So the MMR stands for measles, mumps, and rubella. This vaccine contains a live weakened virus of each of those three diseases put into one. So usually when you're about a year old, they'll usually recommend injecting, putting the first dose, and then it's not until a couple years later, between the ages of 4 and 6, then you can get your second dose. And those doses are delivered subcutaneously, which means that they inject you through the fatty tissue beneath your skin. And so from then on, being injected with the live weakened viruses, you are able to develop an appropriate response for each of them, including mumps specifically. You're able to develop your B cells are able to develop certain antibodies. So I wanted to discuss certain cases that has happened this year in the US from the years 2000 and 2022, and I wanted to highlight certain years. So as you can see, there has not been a year where there has just been no cases of mumps, like that. It just hasn't happened at all. even though it's been very close, like in the years 2021 probably, but nowhere near. So I highlighted 2006, 2016, 2018, and 2019 as well. Had the most significant increases in cases. So in 2006, this is due to this outbreak happening in several Midwestern colleges that happened, and that was probably due through, a lot of person-to-person contact through parties, airport, like just any of those different transmissions that I discussed earlier. This is how it spread, and it spread through those college campuses. But there was able to be a certain decrease after that. But it wasn't up until 2016 through 2019. It happened again, and that was through different cases as well. It was through campuses, but many other things came into play, like religious gatherings, going to sports events, football, soccer, basketball, what other parties, having just any large gatherings where people are very close to each other, and there's a way for that virus to spread very rapidly. And so one interesting thing that I found is that in 2022 there was a significant drop, and that would be due to the fact that it was COVID year and we were all on lockdown, and the social interactions were very limited from person to person. So that means that the virus was not able to travel as efficiently, and so that number decreased very rapidly. And so one other thing interesting that they stated, that most of these cases reported in these outbreaks were by young adults who were already vaccinated with the first dose or those 2 doses. So in conclusion, mumps outbreaks have increased, and these outbreaks will still happen in the US. So for the years to come, I don't know what will happen, if there will be a certain spike again, I'm not sure, but it is more likely to happen. And as I stated, people who have been injected with the vaccine can still get mumps, so it's important to emphasize this. But a lot of people will ask why this usually happens in outbreaks, even if you're vaccinated. So they haven't specifically said, haven't found like a certain conclusion, but here are a lot of possibilities as to why. So first is our immune systems don't react the same as we should when we're injected with vaccines. Every person is different, so every immune system is different, and sometimes we won't be able to have the right response when we need our B cells to create those antibodies, and they just don't. So, but when we do make those antibodies, they're not as effective. We are being injected with weak viruses, so when we're exposed to wild type variants, we're not going to be prepared for the response that we need in order to defeat that virus that's being introduced into our body. Although we can make those effective antibodies for mumps, but we just won't make enough, and they will just decrease over time. And the last one is we're not exposed enough to mumps, and it's a pretty reasonable one. Sometimes we're not exposed, and we just won't develop that natural immunity that we need for certain diseases. So who is at risk? Anyone born after 1957 who has never had mumps or isn't vaccinated yet can still get the mumps, and it will be very severe for them. Adults as well, international travelers, people who are traveling to countries that they don't know are having outbreaks at the moment are at risk, and healthcare professionals who are exposing themselves to people who have mumps that they do know about or they don't even know about, but they're asymptomatic. One thing that I think it's important to emphasize is that there are still a lot of third world countries who don't have access to resources that we do in the U.S., so there is still significant threats to them with these diseases as well as others. So I think it's important to remember that. So yeah. Alright, well, that's the end of my presentation, and thank you for watching.